There's a train a-coming. You don't need no baggage, you just get on board. All you need is faith to it be Susan. You don't need no ticket, you just thank the Lord, yeah, yeah.
Okay, well, hey, welcome back to New South Christians. I'm the host, David Fuquay, and we got a great show for you today. But before I start, there's just something I wanted to say. We just had Dr. Burton on, a psychology professor here at Vol State, because of all the students that we've had that have talked about anxiety, depression, and some suicide. So we wanted to get a sense of maybe where that's coming from. But just something I wanted to remind people, if you haven't watched this yet, there is a train coming. There's like 88 million Gen Z, and they're coming spiritually, they're coming economically, they're coming politically, morally, ethically. They really are going to change the face of everything in this country. So this was really gave birth out of just God putting on my heart that Gen Z is not this generation. Everybody seems concerned that they're killing religion, killing God. Then other people say, you know, they're going to be the savior. So I just thought it'd be great with my background and experience and the fact there's 88 million coming, be a great time to do a show like this. And it's been a blessing. And today is going to be fantastic. I always tell people, we didn't meet by accident. Right. So this is Savannah, and I'm going to let her introduce herself in a second, but I just want to tell you how she ended up here for me. She sent me the nicest email. I mean, it was just the tone, the kindness, her curiosity about the podcast. So we've been emailing back and forth, and I'm so excited to have you on the show. So go ahead and introduce yourself, and then we'll get started.
Well, my name is Savannah Baltimore Gilly.
Great name, by the way. Absolutely great.
I don't know where my parents got Savannah. Everyone's like, Savannah, Georgia, and I'm like, no, I don't think they got it from there. But yeah, I'm studying psychology here, but I plan on moving that over to business management so I can become a store manager.
Okay. So now, are you from the area? Are you born and raised?
I am. I was originally born in Nashville. I grew up in Nashville for a little bit, moved to Hendersonville, lived there for like a year. Okay. And then the rest of my time I've lived here in Portland.
Oh, P-Town person, huh?
P-Town.
Well, let me ask you this. I'm not trying to trip you up. I heard a cool thing on NPR this weekend. They were talking about when interviewing or talking to people, ask them how they feel. And I thought, you know, as opposed to direct questions. So how do you feel?
I'm very anxious right now.
Okay. All right. See, there you go. I was supposed to ask that.
No, yeah.
So you don't feel anxious.
Now I don't feel anxious now that you pointed it out. But like, yeah, when I was sitting here and I was like, okay, deep breath, deep breath.
Don't be anxious. Let me tell you, everybody we've had on here has been absolutely great. And like I said, you're not here by accident. Right. But I mean, just how do you feel generally? Because we've had so many people on here that have shared spiritual things, which we're going to talk about in just a minute, but just their personal life, you know, where they are now and how they feel. And they haven't sat here, you know, shared the burdens of their life, but just when NPR said that, and I thought, well, you know, when you get people on there, ask them, well, how do you feel? I mean, do you feel good? Do you feel good about where you are in life? Do you feel good about, you know, where you are as a student, where you're going? Like, I just asked a young lady in class, I said, what are you planning on doing after this? She said, I'm in such anxiety right now, I don't even think about it. And I was like, whoa, so we can't even have a dream? I mean, that was a little scary. So how do you feel?
I feel wonderful. I feel like I take a look at it as like college versus high school. And since then, I've grown so tremendous as like a person. I found much more fulfillment in my life. I had to realize that, like, you know that famous quote where it's like, you got to realize that life is coming from you and not at you.
All right, I like that.
And yeah, it's like you can be the master of your fate, you could be the captain of your soul.
Absolutely.
But you have to realize that life is coming from you and not at you. Like I have that on my dash.
All right,
and
I like
every time I've like gotten upset, I like look at that quote and I'm like,
It's amazing, isn't it?
It's
always been amazing. You know, probably my greatest weakness as a Christian has been I don't read the Bible enough. I know it, and I even even the other day, I was kind of beating myself up. It was such a nice day outside. I was enjoying it, and I was just sitting there listening. I thought, this is when I really should be reading, because I'm here alone and no distractions. But there was always something I could turn on, some music, or I could do this, or I found an excuse not to do it. And I feel so bad about it, because like a quote like you just said moves you in such a way you think, well, what if you took some time to really read it? And I've always been told you're never going to have a real relationship with God until you read it. So I'm kind of at that weird part in life where I need to discipline myself. I guess I'm confessing I'm not there yet.
No, that's me too. I literally was on the way home. I think it was Friday, and I was like, I was so like emotionally tired. It was just a long day, and I was like, the one thing I need to do is go home and like listen to like a Christian meditation. Like that's the one thing that I had, and then like I had like people calling me like, hey, do you want to do this? Like, hey, this is due. Like, this is due. And I was like, no, I'm going to put that.
That's the devil coming.
Yes. And then I was like, oh, but like, you have to take a shower, you got to cook, like you got to do this. And I was like, no, I'm going to go home and I'm going to rest and I'm going to do that. And that's what I did. And I felt so much better after it, but I still need to do that
There's
more
some
often.
pastors I love to watch on YouTube or listen to. There's a Dr. Charles Stanley, a very older gentleman. He recently passed away. His sermons, they're about 35 minutes long, like a podcast. They just soothe me. They make me think about things. Billy Graham, I've watched all of his forever. And then there's a few other personal favorites, but it's amazing how they change my whole temperament, my mood, my focus, and everything. And so I wonder how much more I would get. Well, one thing I wanted to move on, talk to you is because obviously we call it New South Christians. So obviously I always love to talk about the spiritual and religious side. So how do you see yourself? Because one of the statistics that I've always been alarmed at with this podcast is the greatest or the largest group in your generation are the group that call themselves nuns, which they say, I'm spiritual but not religious. I don't necessarily believe God doesn't exist or exists, but I don't attend church. I'm more into nature or view it that way. So where do you fall? Are you spiritual, religious? Are you?
I would say I'm working my way there. Like I used to be one of those people that like I grew up very Baptist, and then I grew up in like a
good Southern.
Yeah, a non-denominational church and stuff like that. And then I like went away from it and did like the New World, like the crystals and the tarot cards and like, all that stuff.
Well, we were talking a little bit. I don't mean to cut in, but
no, you're good.
The crystals, that's never been my thing. So could you explain it a little more detail? You were sharing something before we started. For people that don't like me, I mean, I'm sure there's a lot of people watching podcasts. I don't know about this.
I never like really understood like the real deeper meaning. It's just like these things were like not necessarily. They were like God's gifts, and that's what I thought back then. And they were like healing, and they were like to bring you love. It was like manifesting. Like you were just like if you own these things and you like kind of worship these things, you would get these outcomes. And that's what I thought.
Where would I get these crystals?
Oh man,
I mean, is there like a crystal store?
Yes,
there is.
There actually is there used to be this big blue like house right next to Belmont.
Oh, really?
Right next to Belmont, yes.
Wow.
And I used to go there all the time. I spent thousands of dollars.
Thousands?
Thousands.
Oh my God.
Yes.
So I go into this blue house and I know what a crystal looks like, but
they were everywhere.
And they
everywhere.
all mean different, or supposedly do different things. And there's obviously somebody there to guide you, I guess.
Yes, absolutely.
So if I came in there saying, I don't know, I have anxiety from a
yes,
relationship.
They're like, let me show you around.
Say,
let me show you like this, this, and then you're like, okay, and then you buy it.
Okay.
And yeah, I was one of those people, and I would buy it.
So and then, can you give an example maybe of one you bought that was supposed to do something, or you were sharing about?
Yeah,
one
no,
before we started.
I don't know if
I don't know
like
if that's too intense or.
I don't know if like this is the part where I'm like, okay, was that real or was it not? Because there's this one where it's like called moldavite, and moldavite is like supposed to be like like one of the strongest crystals. It's supposed to cleanse out all the negative energy in your life, like clear out everything. And I wore it every day. I made it into a necklace. Like I put it on a charm. It was like in this like wrapped wire, and I wore it every day.
Okay.
Every day, and I took it off one day.
Okay.
And it was like my junior year prom, and everything bad that could have happened happened.
Really?
And I never saw that crystal ever again. Ever again.
Okay.
And like when you're done with them, or like when it's done, like doing its work on you, you lose them.
So it fades and loses its power.
Yeah, or like it breaks.
Okay, so
like
then you have to reconnect with another crystal to keep going?
That just means like it's done with you. It did its job.
Wow. Whoa.
It was, yeah, no, it literally was wild.
I'm not going to make this all about crystals, but since I'm pretty ignorant of the subject, is this something popular? I mean,
oh yeah.
So people.
Yes, like I was in a big girl group of 7, like in high school.
Okay.
And all of us had our crystals. Like we all
Really?
We would all go to like this big blue house together. Yeah.
There's no doubt I'm totally out of touch.
We would drive to Nashville just to go get crystals.
Wow.
It was our thing. Like we enjoyed doing it.
Okay.
And even today, like my mom is really into tarot cards and like tarot card readings. And I finally had to tell her, because like I realized the truth within all of that. I was like, Mom, we're not about that. Like we're not doing that.
Is she accepting of that? I mean, is that?
I think my mom really uses it as like a way to, like as a comfort thing to reach with her parents.
Okay.
And if it brings her comfort, then it brings her comfort. But do I think that she's, these people are, with these cards are telling her what her parents are saying? No.
Yeah, okay. Well, what about one last thing? Manifestation. Is it where you just recite over and over the outcome that you're hoping for? Or
It could be.
Okay.
It's like basically having like an intention and like setting that intention and nothing else. Like you only have to think very positively. I literally just recently got rid of all my crystals.
Wow.
Like I went to this place.
So I was going to say, well, what happened? Why did you go from, because I mean, if you were spending that much money, you had the friend network, those peer relationships are very powerful. And if all of you were into it, then obviously there's no reason to stop. So what changed?
Well, one, I wasn't friends with those people anymore.
Okay.
2, as I started getting closer to like, when I got into a very serious like accident and collapsed my lung on my right side and broke my rib cage. And like, I remember I flipped an ATV, and like, I remember like my friends there at that night, like left me. Like there's like pictures and videos of me like passed out on the ground, like left there.
They just left.
Everyone but my best friend to this day, which her name is Callie, she's wonderful. And I remember I was up, like, you know how at Skyline Medical Hospital, they have that glass window? My mom was like, do you need anything from the house? And I was like, please grab my journal. And I had this little purple journal, and I sat in front of that window one night, and I like left the room with my mom, and I was just like, I just wrote down, I was like, I'm vowing my life to God. Like, this is it. This is it for me.
Really?
Like, I'm done with everything. I want to like start doing this. And then like, I couldn't find a church. I was trying out new churches, some in Gallatin, some in Portland. And then I met Jeff, and Jeff told me about my local, and he's like, you should come one night. And I was like,
Okay.
I was really anxious about it, but I went into it, and I immediately like loved everyone. I loved the people. I loved the messages that it was giving me. Like it was just like, it felt like home. And ever since then, I've been going.
Well, on your journey, because you mentioned some other churches, so did you have bad experiences, or you just weren't comfortable? You didn't find the one that fit? So.
It wasn't, well, my original church journey, like when I was a kid, I grew up in church. I grew up in a church that was very different than anyone else's. It was non-denominational. It was a biker church. Like everyone had a motorcycle, and it was just like.
That is different.
Everyone had a, like, it was like hardcore.
So do
like,
I have to have a motorcycle to be in the church? I mean, surely not.
Sure, no, but like
helps.
everyone did.
Yeah,
Everyone did. And literally, it's like my whole family went there. Everyone in my family rides, like. And I remember, I was so young, I didn't really understand like what happened, but I just know that there was like a lot of drama and a lot of like the same thing, like the same messages, and it was like we were getting nowhere, and it was just like.
You don't feel like you were growing spiritually, is what it sounds like.
I feel like my parents weren't growing spiritually. I was like young.
Oh, okay.
But I remember they were really mean to, like, our Sunday school teacher was like really mean to my cousins and stuff like that. And like when you're a kid, you remember those things. Especially.
Yeah, particularly, I mean, I don't want to speak for you, but when you're in church, I mean, it's kind of like being in kindergarten church. There's certain adults you come in proximity that you have expectations of. You kind of put them on a pedestal. They're supposed to be nice, sweet, caring. I mean, those are the things that go with those jobs. And when that doesn't happen, because I've had quite a few people on this podcast that one young lady called it church hurts.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's her friend. I'd never heard that before. She said, yeah, I had a lot of church hurts. And ever since she told me that, I thought, yeah, when you were just talking, that's what I thought of. So
Yeah.
So you basically evolved through a series of churches?
Yeah, and then I went to one in Portland. It wasn't really my thing. My brother actually got baptized there and was going there for a long time. My family was going there. My parents do love that church. I went to one that's like stationed at Gallatin High School.
Okay.
It was my thing, but it was just like out of my time frame. My schedule's like all over the place, so I was going on my lunches.
Yeah.
At work, like I would be like, hey, I'm going on lunch, and then I would drive over to church like as quick as I could, and then sit there for service and then leave.
I know that's hard to do, though. Yeah.
It was hard, but like it was also like. I will say, no, actually, that one was a pretty good one. It just didn't fit with my schedule, and then like I was just trying, random ones. I'd go here, there, try it out, and I just didn't feel like I had a home.
Really? But you feel good now. You like this My Local.
I love My Local. I love it.
Can you explain what that is? Because I mean, anybody who saw Jeff on the podcast would know, but in case somebody didn't.
So
what is My Local?
My Local is basically house church. So there's like different houses all around like the Nashville area, and then there's some in like some countries. Like we have one in India. We have like some in like different states and stuff like that. And it's basically like a group of people, ministers inside of a home. So I go to one that's called North House Church, and it's like the original like pastor. His name's Jared, that like started the whole thing, and it's just. I don't know. It's like it feels more like close. Like I feel like I can get more answers. I can ask questions. I can like open up like really truly about myself and like I feel so connected to God when I'm there with these people.
Well, it's funny you would say that, because one of the really cool things about the podcast that's come out when we talk about criticisms of how your generation is viewing the church is, and a lot of you are leaving the church or not going to the church, but one of the things a lot of people say, their criticism is, I want to have a relationship with God. I don't want to just go into a large auditorium, hear 4 or 5 praise and worship songs, give it a very short message, collect for the tithe, and then hit the road.
Absolutely.
They feel like, here I am, I'm out in this congregation. I want to have a relationship with God. So it's not about what's on the stage, it's what's here. And what you're describing is what everybody that has a criticism of the current church seems to have. I want a place where I feel like I can get questions answered. I can have people with like-minded spirit pray with me to have that relationship with God.
I feel like especially in the South, like based on like the people I've grown up around and the people I've saw, a lot of the time as like you're raised from like you're being a child and you're going into an adult, it seems like a chore. Because a lot of people, I feel like today, especially like older generations and even some of like people that are my age, they look at the church and they go to the church, but it's also like, oh, I'm Christian, but I'm also like doing all this stuff outside the church.
I know what you're saying. So
like I'm flipping roles. Like, oh yes, like I go to church on Sunday, but Saturday night I spent the entire night drinking. It's like, what?
One of the real, I mean, I don't do this to offend students, but I teach economics, and one of the things I mean, it's hard not to bring up some references to the Bible and economics, because there's so many things. I mean, we're a Judeo-Christian society, but also the Bible has so many references about money. The borrower is a slave to the lender. But this is coming back to what you were just saying. One of the things that really is exposing to me is like Google. Google tracks where we go in the data. And what they say about the South is very fascinating. We're the Bible Belt. It's like we make these public proclamations that I'm a follower of God. But at night, when Google tracks us, we have one of the highest density hits on porn. which means there's got to be a percentage of us that are at church Sunday morning and accessing porn at another time. And data doesn't lie. And so it's one of the massive contradictions that we have. And so some of the people that have been on here have been very critical of the church, of not living up to the ideals, which also includes the people there too.
Absolutely.
You know, we've all, what they say, fallen short of the glory of God. But what I wanted to really get to, because your story is like a lot of people, but different also. So when you see that inconsistency in people at the church, I mean, does it just make you lose faith in it altogether? Or does it make you just want to keep reaching out till you find it?
Yeah, it does.
So many people are leaving and they're just not, you know, so it's going to have an impact. So
I think a lot, I don't judge people based on that, because I have my own like sins that I do myself.
Sure.
And I think that people are always looking for, I saw this the other day and I was like, that's it. It was like people are performing for God instead of accepting that, like accepting God.
Sure.
And it's like, for me, it's like, oh yes, like I'm gonna do this. I'm gonna make sure that I say my prayer every night. I'm gonna do this, but like,
in a routine,
I'm gonna go back over here for a little bit and do this. And
so I'm gonna go watch some streaming content with a lot of sex and violence in it.
And,
but that's okay. I'm coming back to Jesus
but I'm coming back at the. But it's like,
I don't mean to laugh about it, but I know exactly what you're talking about.
And me as a person, like whenever like I commit a sin, and like still to this day, I feel like my whole body fills with guilt, like from head to toe. And I feel like for a long time I was like, oh, God's not gonna love me anymore because I did this. And it's like, that's the thing that always pulled me away. It's like, I'm not a good person. I'm not like, people don't love, God's not gonna love me if I'm doing this. But I had to realize and like reshape my mind to understand like, he gave his son for me. Like he loved me so much. Like it's okay. It's not okay if you continue to do it, but the fact that you're like taking notice in it and like trying to be better and taking those steps to be better, it just shows a lot. And I feel like that's where people get confused today.
Well, I can tell you this, I don't, believe it or not, I don't talk too much about religion on this because it's more about you than me, because it's about your generation. But what you just reminded me of, something my mom used to always tell me. She said, son, she always thought I had a good heart, even when I was sinning. And she knew enough about the sin to knew I was bad, but she didn't know nearly as bad as I was. But she talked about, whatever you do, don't get a seared heart. If you get to where your heart is so dark that you don't have any remorse, regret, conviction, she said, then you're dead. So she always left that hope, that there was always hope for you, and that through prayer, other people loving you around you, that one day you get your life straight, which is exactly what happened to me. And for me, it was the pandemic, believe it or not, that really brought me back to God. And so I wonder about with you and your generation and what your experience, how did the pandemic affect you spiritually, or did it not at all? I mean, maybe you were already on the journey before me, so I don't know.
No. Actually, the pandemic is where I crashed and fell.
So you feel like it was the...
I was not a good person. Like people looked at me and thought, oh my God, like Savannah's like high and mighty, like she's this da-da-da. And I was like, every day I was fighting for my life. I was very suicidal. I would cry to my parents every single night, like about my life and like how much I hated my life. I became a huge stoner at such a young age. Like I was high from morning to night for such a long period of time. And no one ever thought that of me, and I was so good at hiding it.
Really?
And so it didn't come until like I literally graduated high school in 2022 that I was like, you need to wake up. Like you need to.
So you're right in the middle of the pandemic, but are you just sitting at home? Because see, that's the other thing. I'm a very social person, and I'm stuck, in this house building a picket fence. I mean, kind of going off, dealing with anxiety and issues, just like you're describing. And I had never been that way. And that's when I really started reading and I started praying. And then I read this one book, Driven by Eternity, and then, sermons online. I just digested them by the hundreds. And it was just like, wow. I mean, so in a way, the pandemic's the best thing ever happened to me. So
I love that for you.
Right, I know, but I'm sitting here listening to you think, well, it's good for Savannah too. So I don't believe God set the pandemic for this, but maybe God just simply used it to get our attention. So.
I definitely think that all the bad that happened in the pandemic, like, still pushed me to like come forward to God. I don't think that was like me drawing back. I think I needed to go through all of that stuff to be where I was today. If I didn't go through that, I think I would still be doing awful things.
Well, once again, I go back to how do you feel? How do you feel about your generation? I mean, obviously there's 80-something million of them and you don't know them all, but you're a representation of them. You said you had a group of friends. I assume you still do. I know you're doing this, local My House Church and all that kind of thing, but how do you feel about your friends and the people you associate with? Are you real positive about them spiritually, or do you think many of them are kind of like what you used to be, still going through that journey? Or do you feel optimistic going forward?
I think that everyone's constantly going through their journey. I think you probably still are to this day.
You're right
I
about
think that everyone expects it to be an end goal. Like, it's like, oh, I have to be this perfect Christian. I have to be this perfect person. I have to do this. Like, it's like you're running and you just can't stop running. But like, it's not about that. It's about steps of progress. And so I feel like the generation as a whole, like mine, I feel like there's two sides. There's those people that are very against it, and then you have like every other thing tying into it. That's like, what? Like, where'd you come up with this?
Sure.
And then there's like the Christian community where it's like a bunch of kids are like, dude, like, this is the right way. Like, come on, like, let's start worshiping God. Like, let's go through this together. Let's figure it out. Even if it's not the truth, like, let's try to figure it out if it is, And I don't know. I feel like I'm on that side, like, where it's like, I don't know. All of my social media now is like Christians and like circuit riders and like,
So you
like
pretty much purged all your social media of any kind of.
And then, like, my friend groups changed a lot. Like, the most of the people that I hang out with, like, I do a Bible study on Sundays.
Really?
And and
so
like,
you do this at your house, or?
No, I usually we do like locations, different locations. So like maybe the lake or something like that,
Oh, great.
Yeah, and so, all of my friends are like the people that come to my Bible studies, or like people that I work with that are like even the people that I've worked with, I've saw them like grow so much with God. And then my favorite topic of all is my best friend, like, it is my neighbor, like we grew up together.
Sure.
And she's like one of those people that's like seesawing back and forth.
Oh, is she?
And she's like, oh, 1 minute, da-da-da, and the next minute like, oh, no, like, this is, I don't know. And it's just like, I learned so much from her, but she like learns from me, and she told me, and she tells me all the time, she's like, Savannah, I just like, I'm in awe in you, with you, with how much you've changed as a person because of this.
Right.
Like, I want to know more because like, I felt how you used to feel.
Just a witness by your life.
I know. And then like literally, this is so exciting because like last week was her first time ever at church with me.
Really? Wow.
And she finally decided to come, and like she had a great time. And that just like spoke volumes, because it was like someone that's very like used to be very against it. Like, there was a point in our friendship where she was like, you can't mention God around me.
Oh, really? So this is God,
like that
God-free zone, huh?
That actually happened. She was like, you're not allowed to mention God around me. Like, if I can't say these things, you're not allowed to mention God. And I was like, well, baby, that's just not going to happen.
That's not going to fly. No.
I was like, I'm sorry about that.
Do you not find it interesting? So many places in the Bible, where two or more are gathered, and, like-minded people. But it is interesting how you do shed people from your past. It's not that you don't love them anymore, you don't care about them.
Yeah.
But it's like so many things that I used to, and I don't want you to get the wrong idea, like I was running up and down the road like a demon, but so many things I either read or was exposed to or thought of, I just don't think about that anymore. I don't think that way anymore. I wake up each day and I ask myself, Lord, whoever you send across my path, let me be sensitive to them, to whatever I can do or say or be positive.
Right.
Which is good, even if I wasn't a Christian, to be like that.
Right.
And you know what's weird? He sends them every day. Now, for years and years, I never prayed that, but I always felt like I was that person. But because I consciously start each day like that, I really think he actually does
He
send
does
them.
it for you.
And I can't tell you how many times I go to bed at night and go, thank you, Lord. I mean, it was just a reminder that you do affect other people around you if you're sensitive to it. And then I think of all the wasted years. See, that's where you and I are so different. You're young, you're at the start, you still have so much time and opportunities. I think, man, I have squandered so many years.
I feel like I did too, even though I am still so young.
Trust me.
I was very mean.
Well, trust me when I say you're a lot younger than I am. You have a lot more opportunities, that's for sure. Well, let me ask you some other stuff, because there's a bunch of stuff popping in my head now.
Go for it.
And I don't say this to be bad or anything, but I've had some students on here really obsessed about talking about heaven and hell. Do you believe in heaven and hell?
Yeah.
So what do you think heaven's like?
I think it's a utopia.
A utopia?
Yeah, I think
that.
it's like a utopia, and you're just like, my pastor said the other day, and it was like, well, a lot of people are like, I went so southern there. I'm sorry.
Hey, we're in the South. This is New South Christians, y'all.
Yeah,
I can do twang if I have to.
My pastor said the other day, it was like, if y'all don't like singing and worshiping now, what do y'all expect heaven to be like? Like, y'all are gonna have a terrible time in heaven. And I was like, oh. Anyways, Lord, I'm sorry.
But I haven't had anybody say that, but that's a good observation. If you don't like praise and worship, what's it going to be like 24/7?
Literally.
For eternity.
Because usually when like we're worshiping, I'm one of those like little rockers, back and forth.
Oh, yeah.
But then I was like, you know what? I got to do it. I'm going to be doing it there. I might as well do it now.
There you go. Well, then I hate to do the negative, but what is hell like? Because you have a lot of people that I've had on here, you can almost tell, hell's not real. Hell's not this. And I'm thinking, well, hell's in the Bible. It's got to be there. But what it literally, I've read parts, but everybody's view seems to be so different.
Well, I don't think we all know until, if we got there, and I hope I don't go there, because to me, in my head, it's like fire and like you're chained together and you're working all day long. It's like, when you have you're like going somewhere and you get a bad feeling in your stomach and you're like, oh, I don't want to go, but it's like 24/7 down there. I don't want that.
24/7 chained up to each other.
And you got that gut-wrenching feeling. Yeah, no, I can't do it.
I'm anxious, anxiety, and suicidal and can't do it.
Yeah.
For eternity, too. See, we were talking about that before I came over here. A couple of students from class, I don't know why, we got talking about eternity, just in a spiritual sense. And the idea that, if you live to be 80 years old divided by eternity means the time we're here is zero. I mean, the time I've just met you, it's over. And I think about that, and that started really kind of getting to me during the pandemic, because I thought, I've squandered all this time, I've squandered these years, I believe in eternity, but how am I going to be judged? And then I started thinking about a calling. And this book I read talked about that, God knew you before you were formed in your mother's womb. I know the plans I had for you.
Right.
And it talks about at judgment, you'll be judged based on, I called you. I gave Savannah these gifts. I gave you this. Well, this was your calling, but you never asked. And see, that's where I kind of felt so guilty about myself. I go, I never asked. I kind of assumed this was it.
Right.
So I started asking God, what do you want me to do with the time I have left? And since there's not much, I need to get busy. And I don't know that this podcast is it, but that's part of what drove that. So I guess I'm coming all the way back around to ask you, do you have a calling, or do you think it's there? Or is there anything right now spiritually that you feel?
It always comes back to one thing, and I'm like, I don't know. I just feel very drawn to helping children.
Really?
And my mom's always like, you're not going to be an elementary school teacher. You're going to make no money.
So you're into, because you want to do business management, right?
I want to be a boss. I want people to be like,
there we go.
I want people to I want to walk into a room and people be like, yeah, she's our boss.
Okay. So you think you have those gifts, those talents, the leadership and stuff?
I do. I'm such a even I work at Walmart now, but like it's so crazy to me because like our store manager, he's like this really tall, like 7 foot like man, and everyone's like intimidated by him.
Okay.
But the one person that isn't is the little skinny blonde girl that's just gonna walk up to him. And I'm like, hi, how was your day? Like, what did you do? Are you reading any books? Like, da 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 da. And I don't know. Like he told me one day, he was like, Savannah, you have such leadership skills, and like people listen to you so often. And I'm like.
Right. Well,
I
but
really
you know,
enjoy
I'm
it.
not obviously speaking for God, but if you still have that pull toward kids, in this book that I was reading, you know, he was talking about certain gifts and talents. Like if he gives you the talent of business to make money, that those contributions of money could go toward
farther.
Like I went on my first mission trip this past summer. It's profoundly changed. It was working with little kids on one half of the day. It just broke my heart. I've never seen anything like it. I've never seen poverty like that. These kids were so sweet. And I just, wow, just came back different. But I was thinking of somebody like you, if you had the gift of making money, that money could go toward a children's health or whatever.
That's
so
what
it
gets
doesn't
me.
have to be directly. It can be indirectly.
That's what gets me
believe.
all the time too, because like you know how like you like always have those speculations of like, what would I do if I won the lottery?
I do that all the time.
You know,
I
or
think,
like
what would I do with that money?
Yeah, and then like I ask people, I'm like, what would you do with all that money? And they're like, oh, I would do this, and I would save it, and I would spend it on this big house, and like da 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 da. And I'm like, oh, so that's where your priorities lie.
Yeah, exactly.
Because,
I told
like,
my
I
class,
feel like I would
follow
just-
the money, and you'll find someone's heart.
Yeah, I just feel like you would.
Yeah.
If you take what you actually need from that, which like if I won the lottery, I would, you know, probably buy me a house, you know, make sure like my future kids have like college laid out for them and stuff like that.
That'd be very natural.
And then donate the rest. Like, why do I need that much money just chilling in my bank account? That's asking for me to go bankrupt. Like, no, thank you, no.
But you just mentioned, I've never asked a person on the podcast this, but I'm going to ask you. This just popped into my head. One of the things I've noticed in churches that's always very controversial is tithing. You know, the idea, the Bible talks about first fruits and that you give 10% to the Lord. And then, of course, the Bible says that he will give you, 7 times that are shaken down. There's a quote there. In other words, he will multiply it back to you. And, of course, that's always very controversial. We're very funny about that when they pass around the basket, putting money in. But I know as far as being disciplined to do that, the tithing is very controversial that way, giving that 10% to the Lord. How do you feel about tithing?
I think that even if even if you just give, you know, you're still gonna get great karma back. Like I don't think that there's
I
anything
think there's
that's
definitely a blessing in giving. That's for sure.
I that's the way I look at it. It's like I'm giving to someone else. Like I'm giving it. I don't need this as much. Like that's just teaching me to not be greedy.
Right.
And that sense. So I don't really have a problem with tithing. I think it's good. I think that it's valuable. I think that it's there for good reason.
Okay.
But I can see where people get like distraught with it.
Well, you notice how church is very careful when they bring it up because it must be I'm not a pastor, but it must be very divisive behind the scenes because even the way they treat it, some don't mention it hardly at all. Some churches really focus on it, teach tithing. Some kind of stay away from it. Some kind of, just kind of back off. So
I think if there's like a
becomes
church that's like really heavy, it's like, hey guys, like donate.
Let's talk about this.
Let's tithe.
Yeah.
It's just like, okay, what are your intentions?
See what I mean?
But
That's
I definitely agree with that. But I like the churches that like don't really like point it out. Like I want to give to you because I'm a good person. I want to give like da 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 da.
Yeah, 'cause you
I don't want to
believe.
give because you're making me like you're forcing me.
Yeah, and you're right.
And you're going to make me feel guilty if I
because that
don't.
quote is you have to be a cheerful giver. I mean, if you're hanging on to it while they're passing a plate going, oh, I begrudgingly give you this, Lord, I'm not sure the blessing's coming with it, do you?
Right, no.
Well, let me ask you something else. I don't want to be negative because we're going to end in a little while, and I always like to end on a positive note. But before that, you've mentioned, and everybody that's been on here has mentioned, anxiety, depression, suicide.
You get me good.
What is the deal? What is going on? I mean, my gosh. I mean, I'm not saying my generation was perfect and great, but when I was your age, I don't think of depression, anxiety, and suicide. And so, what's the deal? I got to bring Dr. Burton in here for round 2
Yeah, no, literally.
And you wanted to be you
I
like
did, yes.
psychology? You
I wanted
talked
to go
about
into
that.
like marriage and family therapy
Oh, okay.
because I feel like that's where a lot of it lies.
Ooh.
And
This country, you could do some. Oh my
I
gosh.
think we as a generation like grew up realizing how our family kind of wasn't always perfect.
So it's our fault.
I don't think that it's
No, it's
our
okay to
fault.
blame us because we're blaming other people for our stuff too. So.
No, I just think I don't blame my parents for anything. This is
But
their
why is there so much of it where there didn't seem to be? Or was there? We
because
just
it's
never talked about
glamorized.
it.
It's glamorized.
Oh, so you think it's glamorous. So it's become popular.
Absolutely.
So if I come in as Professor Fuqua and I share with my class, oh, I'm battling with some real depression. I'm medicated. I'm okay. Because I've glamorized that I have the same pain you have with Cher.
No, not in that sense. I just
Or it's
think that
I'm going to
it's
therapy.
all over the media to the point
Right, but
where
if
it's
I
like
meet-
you're like, oh yeah, I'm depressed. you
Okay, so
know?
I'm your age. I meet you the first time. I go, are you in therapy? Yeah, I am too. Yeah, I mean, is that a good thing? We both share first off. We're both in therapy. Is that what you mean by glamorizing it? We're all going to counseling. We're all doing this.
No, I just think that by glamorizing, people are like kind of use it as like a scapegoat, you know?
Wow.
Does that make sense?
If they are, they're all doing it. I mean, because
like they put everything onto that. They're
What's that?
like I couldn't do this. Like I can't take tests because of my anxiety, which I get.
But I had
But it's like,
anxiety over
what?
a test. But we're talking about, I mean, I don't ask anybody because that's private about medication. But then I read articles about the amount of drugs being taken in our society for, psychological or emotional or all these other reasons. And then the parents. And then, I mean, it's just like on and on and on. And you're like, what happened?
I used to be I've been a person that's, tried to commit suicide. I've been to therapy. I ghosted my therapist.
Ghosted the therapist?
He looked like me. It scared me. I was like,
So you ghosted him.
I did. And my mom was so upset. She was like, I'm paying for this. And like, you're not even talking to him. And I was like, sorry, he looked like me. Like, I don't know what you want me to
I'm
say.
sorry to laugh, but that's pretty funny.
No, it was
Ghosting your psychologist.
I did. Sorry, Dr. D. I'm so sorry to this day. But
Oh
no,
my
I
gosh.
ghosted him. But I used to be, I went through a stage where I literally thought my life was so worthless. And I think that solidly was because of who and where I was spending my time around.
So what's the answer then, generally speaking, for your generation?
People don't want help. That's the thing, that people are so okay with feeling sad that they don't have the energy to go look for what makes them happy.
So there's no solving the problem as long as they don't want that. I mean, if they don't want
They gotta
change.
want change
Right.
to get change.
Well, do you think the church can be a catalyst for that, or does the church have too many problems to do it? And I'm not
Yeah, I
painting a
feel like
brush
it- I
at the
feel like
whole
it
church,
could.
but we're talking about your generation, and we're talking about the Bible Belt.
It
We're
can
talking
only
about New
work.
South Christians. I mean, come on, what are we going to do? Should the church do more in this area? I mean, surely they should.
I think they should, but like I don't think they should pressure it because
Right.
I think that at the same point it will like run people away. I think people will go after what makes them feel comfortable. I don't think that we should be pressuring people like, hey, feel better. Like, no, that's not how life works. Like, there's a lot of things that I had to realize as a person when I was feeling, I still go through those like moments where I'm like, oh my God, I'm worthless. I have nothing. Like, I am nothing. Like, da 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 da. And I'm like, and then I like, it takes time. You have to want to like not feel that way. And I'm one of my best friends like constantly stays in that moment where she doesn't like change, and it's hard for her. It's hard for her to like get up and clean her room. Like it's literally
But
hard.
how could you even have relationships in that environment? I mean, that's got to be hard to be
It's really hard.
It's got to be hard to be around even when you care for the person. And I'm thinking, if you were opposite sex and trying to date them, you're dealing with stuff that's probably way over your head.
Well, that
as
just
far
goes
as
down
that.
to the attachment theories.
Right.
And like if you're anxious, you're avoidant, or if you're secure,
Yeah.
you know, there's a lot of things that people don't realize that they need help on and they need a change on, and so they keep it like that, and then they wonder why they get themselves in predicaments where their partner cheats on them, you know, where they're feeling insecure every day, where, you know, they feel like cheating, and it's just like, or even in friendships where they're like a bad friend, they're lying, like stuff, like everything. It's just like, you don't want to change who you are to become better. And I just read this book, and it was like, this whole society is so focused on getting off to like Mars. Like we're traveling to Mars. We want to go leave this planet to find something better. Why can't we just fix the place that we're at?
That's a good point.
Like we have all this technology and all this like, you know, information to like go and do something and like make a change. Why aren't we making it here?
Good point.
And it just baffles me to this day.
Well, then let me, couple quick things and then we'll end. So let me tell you, once again, I go back to where we started. So how do you feel? Do you feel your generation is going to be okay? Or do you feel, I mean, what you just said, we're going to go to Mars, we're not going to fix what's here. So you think, what's going to happen for us to fix it here? Because,
Unity.
Huh?
Unity.
So you think unity is the key?
I think that
so how
is.
we all get on the same bus, go in the same direction?
It's going to be really hard, but like people have to compromise with other people. Not everyone's opinion is going to be right, but we have to take steps of where like, though this may be bad, is it worse than this one? Like, what can we do to like make this better? It just blows my mind to this day. Like, we have so many different like problems and like in life right now, and the government's doing nothing about it. But they want to ban TikTok. Like that's,
oh, man.
Y'all are so quick to pass a bill about that, but y'all can't pass a bill on anything else.
Oh, it's so funny you bring that up. We just talked about that in class in that same context just a minute ago, which leads me to a couple of final questions I got to ask you. And I promised myself after Dr. Burton I would do more of this. This is probably, I'm not sure your age, but this is probably your first presidential election that you have the opportunity to vote in?
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
I just turned
So
19.
there's 80-something million of you. So you basically are going to have an opportunity to probably affect every election from here on for a long time.
That's exciting.
By the next cycle, your generation will dominate it all. We're not going to have any more Bidens or Trumps. Those days are over. It's just the demographics aren't there. So I'm curious, how do you feel about this election coming up? And you don't have to tell me who you're leaning toward voting. I'm just talking about, how do you feel about your generation participating? Just the TikTok example just makes me laugh.
I'm excited.
Yeah.
I'm so excited. I think that our generation is pulling out facts and not going, I feel like a lot of people most of the time goes based off feelings.
Yeah, you're a good point.
And votes based off feelings, but I feel like our generation is moving towards facts, and that feels good.
Well, good for you.
That
You know,
feels
I've had
really
several young people say exactly what you're saying, that with the access you have to information, there's no reason for you to not be educated on the truth of what these people are proposing, regardless of who you decide to vote for. And so I thought that made me feel very,
and either way,
positive.
People are very focused on, like, you know, what did this person do? What did this, you know, candidate do? Da da da.
Yeah.
And I'm like, okay, we can't look at all of that, because we gotta narrow it down. Like, who's the better person here? Because they're both equally bad. Like, I don't know what y'all want me to do about that.
Good point.
They're both gonna be awful, like, people, but like we gotta pick the better one here. Like, come on, guys.
Okay.
I don't know who the better one is. I need to do more research on both,
but
both of them.
But you're very optimistic about it. You're very positive.
Yes, I'm hopeful.
Well, good.
You know, I'm very hopeful.
Well, see, I like hearing that. That makes me feel good. Then one other question. So economically, how do you feel? I mean, you're talking about business management. You're working at Walmart right now. I assume after Vol State, you'll go on, finish your bachelor's degree, and then go to work for some corporation, or I'm not sure what your trajectory
what I'll
is.
do. Yeah, I don't know what I'll do either, but
how
like,
do you
hopefully.
feel? Do you feel like after you get your degree that you should be optimistic about your opportunities?
I
being
think
a young woman at
that's
this
me
time?
now.
Right.
I just know that at the end of, you know, wherever I end up, I want to be very professional. I want to speak very professionally. I want to come off very professionally. I want to, you know, be a person that someone can look to and be like, I can come to her and I can say anything, and she's going to have a proper response.
Good
Like,
for you.
and I don't want people to feel judged when they come around me too. Like I used to be a very mean person and like very dark, and now I feel like people can like come up and speak to me and ask for an honest answer. And I've always been very honest about my life and who I am as a person and trying to understand who I am as a person. So it's like, this is me, and I'm not hiding anything, and this is how I can help you.
Well, I got to tell you, that's a great note to end on, because I was sitting here thinking, I've got to ask her some really profound, thoughtful question, but I think the way you speak about yourself is perfect.
I try to.
I feel really, well, you present yourself well. Just
Thank
the way
you.
you've sat right here. And by the way, this is my first time meeting her. I swapped a couple of emails, but I didn't know who she was coming down the hallway. I assumed it was you, but you were dressed up, and I was like, wow, I wonder where she's going. I was like, she's coming to the podcast. So anyway.
I literally, like, I was texting someone this morning, and I, like, sent a video, and I was like, one thing about me is, like, wherever I'm going, I was like, I like to dress professionally. I like to look like this. It makes me feel more confident as a person. Like I like to withhold standard.
You did a great job. I've really, really enjoyed it.
Thank you.
Absolutely. Well, anyway, that's enough for now. But hey, listen, if you enjoyed this, tell other people. Savannah, she watched it, talked to Jeff, and then ended up being on the show. And I mean, that's how people send them. And we love every point of view, even if you're a non-believer in what we're sharing. That's fine. New South Christians is not about stereotyping one group. It's about everybody. So anyway, God bless you. Have a happy day. And thanks, Savannah. I really enjoyed it. Have a good one.
People get ready. There's a train a-coming. You don't need no baggage. You just get on board. All you need is faith to it be Susan. You don't need no ticket, you just thank the